Achieve. This year, we implemented the Read to Achieve legislation to meet the requirements of the law. The North Carolina Department of Public Instruction developed a portfolio process third grade students may complete in order to demonstrate proficiency. Administering the passages as part of the portfolio to each student takes about 40 minutes each day from reading instruction. How do lawmakers see this as a benefit for students? Do you anticipate any changes in the law during this short session or the next general session? Representative Richardson, we'll start with you.
I was in the educational system over in Vance County, and immediately we began to wonder, how will we meet these challenges? What will we have to do differently? What demands, what changes, and what challenges will this new mandate bring upon us? Of course, there have been many fears about this particular law because it was not something that was phased in. It started immediately, so you have third graders that began, I think, January of 2013 that will have to face this rigorous and assessment that you face with trying to help them to get to a point that they can show that they're proficiency in reading or proficient in reading. And I spoke with some people from DPI yesterday because I lost track of what Read to Achieve was all about because I'm not on the education committee. And my understanding is that there are some flaws. And my understanding is that there's local control and that some of the intentions of the law has been changed at local levels, that there are not 36 tests that you have to give, that all students do not have to take the portfolio. It is one of the, I think they call it the good cause exemptions. And you know, in any testing situation that we have had, we've always had what we call exemptions. The LLEP students have had exemptions. The students with disabilities have had exemptions. And then we've had some alternative ways of testing students who we know can get it, but we just have to give them a little bit more. We have to try some different things. And so I think this law, because it's new, because we have not had a chance to really massage it and work through it and iron out the glitches and the bugs, we are going to be apprehensive about it. We are going to be fearful of it. We are going to criticize it. But if it gets our students to the goal of every student reading at a third grade level, then it's worth it. And as educators, we know that we have so many changes. We always coin the phrase that we build a plane and fly it at the same time. Laws have always passed, and they've been put in place before the guidelines have been put in place. And we have stepped up to those challenges, and we have been successful. And I know you will be successful with this, even though it presents many challenges for you. So, and the thing that we have to understand, it is law. Whether we like it or not, it is law. And so I applaud you this morning for bringing it to the attention of us, and hopefully you will, if not in this session, get an opportunity to write us because you have our cards. Let us know what you see needs to change so that when we do go back into the short session, that we will have some information that we can say, these are the concerns, here are some solutions to making this a more workable process. I did read a letter that the Speaker Pro Tem submitted to Superintendent June Atkinson, and it admitted that there are flaws there, and the Department of Public Instruction has been instructed to correct those flaws. Therefore, I'm sure that it will come up in our short session, and how much time it will get, I don't know. Not being on the educational committee, I don't really know what the temperature is or what the climate is, but we do know that any time that we approach something new, we've got to massage it, we've got to work out the bugs, and then we've got to come back and massage it again and get it to the point that it works for all that are included, students, parents, and educators. And we don't want our parents feeling that they cannot assist in this process. And I had a parent who did tell me that she could not help her child at all in this process. So I think that it is a valuable tool. It may be a challenging tool, but I do see that we will work through it, and I think it will come out to be a very good product, and especially for those students that will start out in kindergarten, who will have the full benefit of maybe 4 years at least before they get to this. And then by that time, teachers will have this process down, just like they met the challenge of No Child Left Behind. They met the challenge of the reading at second grade level. And so if you feel that we could do something differently to help with this process, please let us know, because we're not implementing it. We've written the law, DPI has written the guidelines, and now you are the practitioners that have to help us figure out what's best about this law, what needs to be changed, and how do we go about ensuring that our students are reading on a third grade level. Thank you.
The question here was, administering the passages as part of portfolio to each student takes about 40 minutes each day. How do lawmakers see this as a benefit for our students? Well, we don't, frankly. In fact, the portfolio was only one of 5 options that were actually written in the law that could be used to assess students. It was never meant to be a blanket way of dealing with every single student. In fact, the letter that Representative Richardson alluded to, I'd like to read one paragraph from Speaker Pro Tem Berger to Superintendent Atkinson. Said, in response to the many concerns raised regarding the student reading portfolio, thank you for committing DPI to fixing the process it developed and using the portfolio as the law intended as a targeted alternative for students who struggle with the state standardized end of grade reading test. We assumed that was the only people that would be using this process. The DPI came out with guidelines, and for some reason or other seemed to emphasize that, and to the point where I was being led to believe that some people thought that was the only alternative for administering this process. There are actually 5 options, including coming up with your own assessment, and since we had this hearing in January, I saw a recent article that at least 30 school systems have had their own assessments approved by the state school board. So this burdensome process is not meant to carry every student through. So whether the law will be changed, I don't know. DPI's implementation definitely needs to be changed, and I think it already has been, is beginning to be changed since the hearing on January 28th. Again, I would advise you to take advantage of any option that you feel is a better option here as a local school system. And if none of the 5 options are good, give us another one. We tried to give enough leeway there where students could be dealt with in a way that's best for them individually, and each system can deal with whichever of those options they think are best for them to use individually. And apparently a number of our systems are beginning to do that. Again, as Representative Richardson stressed, each student being able to read by the end of 3rd grade is vitally important. How we get there is always open for debate.
Our second question focuses around teacher tenure. Please discuss your position on the legislation to end teacher tenure in North Carolina. Please share why you believe a teacher selected for the 25% pool should or should not accept the contract, and how you believe this will improve or harm our ability to recruit, retain, and reward excellent teachers.
Let me go ahead and make a blanket answer to about 3 questions on this thing. How did you vote on this particular issue? I went back and read the budget again last night to make sure I was correct on this, because I just saw these questions for the first time yesterday. But Each time you ask that question here, each of these issues, whether it's teacher tenure or the master's pay, or I forget what the third one is, but we'll get to it. All of those things were included in the 2013 budget. Now, I don't like that, frankly. In 2011, when I was first serving in the House wrote the budget and passed it over to the Senate, and they amended it, sent it back to us, and so forth. 2013, the Senate had the initiative. They wrote the budget and then passed it to us, and so forth. We had already decided in the House we weren't going to put policy in the budget. And frankly, I don't like putting policy in the budget. But Senate Pro Tem last time ran on a platform of education reform, and he put his education reform in the budget. Now, the budget's about 300 pages. I don't know how many, it probably has 10,000 items in it, and I might not like 50 of them, but if I think it's a good budget overall, I vote for it. I did vote for the budget, so I was guilty of voting for the provisions of the budget, including this one. I would much rather see the educational part and the transportation part and a lot of other parts taken out as separate bills. I like bills that deal with one issue. Our Senate likes to cobble things together and make large bills. But anyway, I don't have control over that. So yes, I did vote for the budget last year. I hope my House colleague members in 2015 will remember how much we disliked all the policy that was written into the budget in 2013 and won't be guilty of that ourselves when we get to initiate the budget in 2015. And it'll actually be a budget and not a combination of a budget and a policy document. As far as the answer to the other questions here, I really think in my conversations with teachers, and I have them often. In fact, I have one a month, whether I like it or not, because I'm a volunteer in the nursery in my church, and the lady who serves with me is an algebra 2 teacher here in the school system. So she has my undivided ear for about an hour once a month, which is a good thing. I'm just joking about it because I like her and I like what she's doing. But the teachers I've talked to are more concerned, frankly, with compensation and with over-assessments and having to do too much administrative work rather than teaching. Those are the problems I hear. So to me, if we can solve those problems, I think those are more important than tenure. I have kind of mixed feelings about tenure. I've worked, for instance, for the same financial firm for 22 years, and I've brought a lot of money into that firm, and I still have production requirements that I have to meet this year in order to even stay employed, and I have higher production requirements that I have to meet if I'm going to get any help with my benefits and so forth. So I'm so used to being performance assessed myself that a job for life or something, I'm not really sure I agree with that. I think we need to compensate our teachers correctly. I think our teachers do need to have due process. If they're dismissed, they need to know the reasons why. Those reasons need to stand up. I think we have pretty good due process across the state for our state personnel, even in our State Personnel Act. So I'm not sure why teachers couldn't use the same grievance process that all the other state employees use, because I think we have good safeguards in there. So this is not as much a concern for me as making sure that we make our teachers' jobs something that's actually doable and not oppressive, and that we pay our teachers adequately for what they're doing. Those, to me, are frankly bigger issues.
Thank you. Unlike Representative Collins, I did not vote for the budget because of some of the things that were in it, and this was one of them, even though the budget did pass. I did not feel that we were treating our teachers with respect and with the professionalism that they deserved. I think that tenure is I was an educator, and I know that I felt exceptionally good about knowing that I did not have to worry from the year to the next that I was going to have a contract, that I would have a job. And so when you're trying to plan your future and plan for your family expectations, it's nice to know that there is some stability there. So I did not vote for this particular budget. And I do believe that teachers should have tenure. I do believe they should have career status. And I know that there's a process in place because I have been in a position where we have dismissed teachers and we have not hired teachers back because of their evaluations or because of some other issue that they got involved with. So there is a way to dismiss teachers without eroding the entire system. As far as the 25% pool and the salaries being given to those teachers, I know every teacher in here wants every dime that they can get, but I urge you to not let them divide and conquer you. You're more powerful as a unit, and you can demand more things and have a larger voice if you continue to stand as a unified force. But I don't know how to advise those teachers who may be in that 25% pool. That's a personal issue for you. And you know what your economic needs are, and you know what your situation is. But I would wish that we had not passed such a divisive bill. I think we could have done something differently. And when you look at it, what are you getting for $500 versus what are you giving up? And if you hold out a little bit longer, maybe you can get some better benefits. So I urge you to think deeply about that. You make that decision, but understand that once we start chipping you off and giving this little group a raise and that little group a raise, then the community learning that we as stressed as school systems should have, the collaboration that we stress that school systems should have, is going to be deteriorating because there are going to be some hard feelings, you know. I remember once at Department of Public Instruction, I did not get a merit pay. And I was told that I didn't get a merit pay, not because I had not done a great job, but I didn't get it because the man that I worked with had 25 years of experience and I only had 2. Well, I did a great job. In the 2 years that I was there, I met every criteria that I was asked to meet. I could not compete with a person who's been there for 25 years. I can't compete with Representative Collins because he has 2 years of history for the General Assembly that I don't have. But I don't think that I should be penalized because I don't have the same years of credit. So what I'm saying about that is I lost out on income because someone made the decision that you had to have X number of years in. So teachers, come together as teachers, talk about how this will impact you and what you can do to ensure that all teachers get a raise, which is what should be happening and hopefully will happen soon. Thank you.
This question relates to teacher morale. Why, from your perspective, should young teachers or career educators stay in public education in North Carolina? What value does past and current legislation show for public school educators? And we'll start with Representative Richardson.
I certainly hope young teachers and tenured teachers will stay in education because we need you. And I believe each and every one of you went into education because you had a passion for it, you believed in it, and you know that you can make a difference in the lives of children. I know it's difficult, but I would like to point out to you that when I worked in Durham Public Schools, in I think it was the early 70s, well, early 80s, Governor Hunt was the governor. Our salaries were froze for 7 years. Our pay grades were froze for 7 years. When the economy is not doing well, we all have to make some sacrifices. So eventually those 7 years passed and our pay steps did get reinstated and we did get salary increases. I remember when I was at the Department of Public Instruction, I got the largest salary increase that I've ever gotten, which was 7% as an educator. That is from the state. Of course, I've gotten some promotional salaries. So I think that we have to weather the storm. If you jump ship because one thing happens to you at one point in your life, what lesson are you teaching your students? And you are their role models. You tell them every day, stick to it, it's going to get better, this is not the worst that it can be. And I hope you will take that attitude and understand that we will, when the budget allows, help you gain some salaries, but everybody has had to suffer in this last economic depression. But we do hope that you will stay there because you love it, because you love your communities, and because you know those students need you. And better days will come, I assure you. Thank you.
Let me start with the, oh, by the way, I forgot to address part of the last question. That 25% pool thing, I don't think I addressed that. 25% is an arbitrary number to me. I'm not wedded to that. To me, that's kind of an arbitrary thing that really doesn't matter to me. What we make it, any percent's okay with me. I'm like Representative Richardson. I'd rather see people rewarded based on what they're doing rather than on a percentage basis or how many years they've been doing something or whatever. As far as teacher morale goes, let me start with that last question. What value does past and current legislation show for public school education? I can't speak for past General Assemblies before 2011 because I wasn't there before that. I can only speak for the current one that's been there for the last 3 years. And I can say this, that our current legislature values public education extremely highly. We have had more House majority caucuses on the one topic of when and how much can we raise teacher pay than we've probably had on all other topics combined. The last one we had was 3 Saturdays ago. We met in Greensboro to discuss this very topic of what can we do to raise teachers' salaries. And of course, once the House and Senate got together with the governor's kind of spilled the beans on that already. And I don't want to say taking credit for it, but anyway, it's something we've been working on for a long time. And I like the governor. I have nothing against him, but that's his job to get out and be the pulpit guy for all of us. But that's been in the works for a long time. That didn't just pop up in his office out of nowhere. As I understand it, this will probably be the first significant pay raise for early year teachers to jump the basic salary up probably since the 1990s. And it's going to be a significant starting point increase. And of course, because of the way pay grades have been frozen, I think they were frozen in 2008, the last time, it's going to affect a lot of teachers, probably in their first 6 or 7 years. So that's a good thing. Well, one of the studies that we've been conducting showed that one of the real deficiencies we had in North Carolina was in our starting salaries. They were just too low. So I hope this will be a recruitment tool going forward. I hope we'll be able to encourage young people that they will be able to make a livable wage in North Carolina by being teachers. I think it's a shame that you can't make a living wage teaching. I really do. Now, I made that decision when I was younger, but I made that decision in a smaller school situation knowing that. That's different. But I want our teachers in our public schools to be able to make a livable wage. So I hope that'll be an encouragement, and I hope that'll help morale, and I hope that'll help as a recruitment tool for young teachers. And we'll continue to have caucus meetings on how we can continue to improve the compensation package for North Carolina teachers.
School calendars. What is your position on allowing LEAs the flexibility to explore possible changes to the state calendar law, specifically opening and closing schools based on the academic and instructional needs of students? And we will begin with Representative Collins.
We can catch up on some time on this one. I'm open to this one. I'm not wedded to any calendar, and I'm all about putting more power back into LEAs, back into local school districts to make more school decisions.
I agree with Representative Collins there, and I also sponsored a bill. And as a freshman, I found out that sponsoring a bill, they can just sit somewhere, so it's out there somewhere. But I did sponsor a bill, and I do agree that each school district should have that autonomy because all our regions of the state have different needs, and we should not wed everybody to the needs of one area of the state simply because it fits their needs and their economic development. Thank you.
Please share your position on the A through F grading of schools. Additionally, please explain why you voted for or against this legislation and how you believe posting the school's grade at the front entrance will either help or hurt public education in this region. We will begin with Mrs. Richardson.
I am opposed to this if it's the only grading that we are going to give. There's so many variables in teaching children until an A through F grade just does not get to what you do on a daily basis. At one time we had the 3 R's, and now we have the 3 C's, or the 4 C's, excuse me. And at one time, you know, kids came to school, they went home to eat, they went home and mom and dad took care of whatever their emotional needs were, whatever their medical needs are, sanitary needs, and food and nutrition. And now school systems have had to take on all of that. So I don't think that we should publish that. I think there needs to be another grade that goes along with it, even if we are wedded to having an A through F. I think there should be a grade that shows improvement, because students may not be where you want them to be, but teachers do move students from one point to the other within a school year. They may not master everything in that school year that's expected, but they do grow, and I think we need that growth model. I also have talked to several superintendents in my district, and one is here, and he made me realize that when people come to an area looking to establish a business or buy a home, they want to know what the school system looks like. And I've heard many times when I was in Durham that people call ahead of time when they're planning to move somewhere. They want to know what does the school system look like. So if we're posting that our schools are making Fs, when that F school has moved students from maybe reading on a pre-primer grade level to at least a first grade level, even though they may be in the 3rd grade, that is progress. And how do we show that? Showing an A through F only. Even on our students report card, we put comments down there. It's showing improvement. You know, behavior is good. We don't just send the alphabetical letter home. So I think we need to look at that, and this is the time again that I think we say you have local autonomy, and then we yank it back from you when we feel like it benefits our program. So I'm against it, or totally as it is, but if we do have to show some accountability, then I would like to see the growth model included.
Thank you. I think we're going to be pretty much in agreement on this one. I've talked with your superintendent about this, and this is one of the things that I think he and I agree on. I don't think we need to have one grade that's 80% determined by proficiency and 20% determined by growth. If we're going to post grades on the school, frankly, I'd like to see 2 grades posted. I'd like to see one for proficiency and one for growth, because to me the growth is just as important as the proficiency. You may be, schools don't start out with students at the same place, and you need to be recognized and awarded for creating improvement. To me, the improvement is every bit as important as the proficiency. So if we're going to have one grade, let's make it 50-50, not 80-20, but I would prefer to see 2 grades. I would prefer to see a grade for proficiency and a separate grade right there along with the other one for growth. To me, they're equally important. As far as the question about how will this help or hurt, public education in this region, or I guess how schools feel about themselves, probably depends on the school. I would imagine Cedar Grove Elementary and Nashville Elementary are probably pretty proud of theirs. I noted where they were awarded not too long ago for being in the top 10% of Title I schools in the state for proficiency, not just for growth. So I certainly tip my hat to those people. But on the other hand, I think there would be a lot more schools that could be proud of what we were doing if we posted a growth grade, because we may have other schools in the area that are in the top 10% in the state in growth, rather than just proficiency. And I think that's equally important. So I would like to see, if we're going to post grades, let's post 2. Let's post one for proficiency and one for growth.
This question has to do with master's pay for teachers. Please share how you voted on the elimination of master's degree pay for teachers. Do you believe that an advanced degree impacts the teacher's knowledge base and/or influences the quality of teaching delivered in classrooms? Will this matter be revisited in the short session, and we will begin with Representative Collins?
And we've got about 3 questions here, so let me just kind of go down the line. This again was a part of the budget. This was not a separate bill. It should have been, but it was part of the budget. To me, it's not as important what I believe about something as it is what the evidence shows. I'm very much I believe in statistical study. I believe in evidence-based policy. I'm pretty much a rationalist rather than an emotionalist, although I can get emotional about a lot of things like Carolina State basketball, but I try to stay on the rational side when I'm dealing with policy issues. There are a lot of people that know a lot more about education than I do. One of them's probably sitting to my right. I'm viewed as a go-to person, frankly, for financial issues in the House, which is why they put me on virtually every financial committee that comes up. I'm not as much an education expert, although I have been in classrooms teaching, although in a different situation than a lot of you folks here. So I pay attention to what people who know more than I do about it say. As far as master's pay and whether it impacts student performance, again, it's not so much what I think, but let me quote what a couple of people who know a lot more than I do say. U.S. Education Secretary Ann Arnie, however you pronounce it, A-R-N-E, I'm never sure whether that's Arn or Arnie, but Arnie Duncan said, he told the American Enterprise Institute, November 2010, that master's degree bonuses are an example of spending money on something that doesn't work. Billionaire Bill Gates, who has spent far more money trying to educate kids than all of us in this room will ever see in our lifetimes, had this to say, and I quote, "My own state of Washington has an average salary bump of nearly $11,000 for a master's degree, and more than half our teachers get it. That's more than $300 million every year that doesn't help kids," end of quote. So people who are very, very involved in the education system and know a lot more than I do about it say the studies show that it really doesn't have any effect. I know that studies do consistently show, because I've looked at some of them, that except in certain fields of study, it really kind of depends on the field study, that there's no student outcome effect for master's degrees. So I'm not sure that this is not one that's evidence-based. I do think, though, that the way the law was passed, and this gets to a second or third question here, the timing wasn't right, and I said that when it showed up in the budget. If you're gonna cut off a benefit for future people to get it, you need to give people fair warning. And cutting it off in the time frame in which it was done was not fair, was not correct. And I've been told by the speaker's staff that the master's supplement will be extended to those who were enrolled in at least one course by July 1st, 2013, which is when the law was passed. So we're not yanking away a promise from people who in good faith started the process. And I think that's very important. I'm still willing to debate on whether this should be something we do going forward or not. Perhaps I've heard some suggestions. Our speaker suggested that, for instance, there might be a compromise where if somebody's getting a master's degree in the subject matter in which they're teaching, we continue to supplement it. But if they're getting a master's in, for instance, administration to get out of the classroom, then maybe we wouldn't support that. So anyway, I think that topic's still open for debate. I think the timing issue will be solved in the short session pretty much as soon as we get there.
Being an educator of 35 years and having 3 degrees, I disagree with this. I think that people should be rewarded for the effort they put in. And I think that there are benefits to people going back and learning, improving their skills and improving their instructional delivery and learning different ways, because we're faced with a different clientele of students almost on a daily basis. The students that you teach today their behavior is nowhere near the behavior of teachers who taught when my mother was in school, when all you had to do to write a kid up, maybe for chewing gum or talking. When I came along, yes, we had the talking and we had, missing class or fights now and then. When I left Vance County, we had students that literally ran out of school every day to the week. They come to school, and this was an elementary kid, a middle school kid, and a high school kid. They were called runners. So we cannot expect a teacher to go through 4 years of educational training, come out into the practice world and have enough knowledge to face all of the challenges that they're going to be faced with the students that we're dealing with now. So there are other programs for them to go back to and to improve on those skills. And I think if those teachers are willing to go back and improve on those skills and get another degree, then they should be rewarded for that. I disagree with cutting out master's pay. And maybe Arnie Duncan and Bill Gates know something that I don't, but I do know that being in a classroom over 35 years, the student's profile has changed tremendously. And if I had not gone back to school to learn new skills and new techniques, I would have been a failure and more than likely would have decided I don't want to teach anymore. If I knew that there was nowhere for me to go to get better skills, to improve my engagement with students and learn how to meet the students' needs that varied from that traditional student, then I would have probably flunked out of teaching and found something else to do. So I did not vote for it. As he said, it was in the budget. I did not vote for our budget, so those things I did not vote for. Thank you.
We touched on this a little bit earlier, but I did want to collect any additional thoughts that you all have regarding your position on improving pay for all teachers, not just new teachers, as well as other school and district support staff and administrators. Representative Richardson, we'll begin with you.
I think if I understand it correctly, it was for new teachers, and I'm not sure whether that was first year to third year teachers, or someone said it was first year to 6th year teachers. Can someone clear me up on that before it was?
All teachers who are below the $35,000.
It was up to the first 1 through 6, 1 through 6 years, right? Yeah.
Yes, actually, teacher is.
No, that's not correct. Nobody will make less than $35,000 2 years from now. Nobody. It's been
Well,
misrepresented a lot, but that's
yeah.
not correct.
I think we are still at that point of dividing and conquering. You know, why are we passing laws and giving raises and bits and pieces when teachers have to work together? You're going to have teachers that fall in the 25% category. You're going to have teachers in the same building that are in the 1 to 6 year category. So how are the teachers that don't fit into either one of those categories feel about themselves, and about how do they go home and pay the same bills that these other teachers pay if we're not going to give a salary? I think if we give a salary, we should give a salary to all teachers, and we should reinstate the pay grade steps so that each year we give something, and if the economy gets to a point that it did in the last several years, then we have to go back to freezing things. But I don't think giving this group a raise and that group a raise and not giving other people a raise makes good for a superintendent or a principal to be able to motivate 100% of his or her staff to give 100% of their effort every day when we are not treating them equally when it comes down to the pay.
This idea of a pay raise that the state, House and Senate and governor's office have come up with jointly has been greatly misreported and misrepresented. I've had people call me and say that their daughter, who's been teaching for 15 years, is now going to be making less than a starting teacher. That's not correct. I've got kind of the nuts and bolts of the numbers here. The idea behind this came from a study which showed that the biggest single deficit we had in North Carolina as far as our teacher compensation program was that our starting salaries were just not competitive with states around us at all. And so we decided to address that first. We know that policies we've passed in the last 3 years are improving the economy of North Carolina and are increasing our revenue collection. This is just the beginning of fulfilling a promise that we made back in 2011 when we first took the majority. It was not my party that froze teacher salaries in 2008. In fact, my party is the only one that's given any kind of raise to teachers in the last 6 years. Granted, it was modest. This next one's going to be a lot less modest than the first one was. You know, when I got to the General Assembly in 2008, you cannot ignore the situation that you're in. I had a lot of people ask me, Jeff, why in the world would you run for office, especially at this time, when you know the state has a $2.5 billion structural budget deficit? Because what had happened is during the recession, the General Assembly before me had been using federal stimulus money that was coming in 2009 and 2010, but was not going to recur after that to meet our budget, and stop spending state money on those things. So when I got there in 2011, we had to come up with $2.5 billion from the state coffers that had been being paid by the federal government. Now, as it turned out, that was only the tip of the iceberg. I also found out after I got there that we had been borrowing federal money to pay unemployment benefits, for extended unemployment benefits. We had borrowed $2.5 billion from the federal government, not even made an interest payment, and that number was growing daily. It was $2.8 billion by the time I got robbed. We also were told, right out of the chute, that we were $400 million short of properly funding the state employees' retirement plan. That deficit was staring us in the face. And that the previous group was also $500 million short of paying for state employees' health benefits. The health benefits were going to run out, and you were going to have to pay your health costs out of pocket if we didn't come up with another $500 million. Now, you add up $2.5 billion, $2.8 billion, $500 million, and $400 million, and that adds up to $6.2 billion. That was the hole we were looking at filling when I got to the General Assembly in 2011. That's almost a third of an annual budget. Our annual state budget for the state is about $20 billion. Now you think about starting out the year, a third of your budget in the hole. I don't know what it takes to run your family, but let's say your family runs off $50,000 a year, and somebody tells you at the start of the year, oh, by the way, you're $16,000 in the hole this year starting out. You've got to fill that hole before you can start paying your bills. That's where we were. Now, my party does not believe in making promises we can't keep. So what we said was, we're first going to dig our way out of this hole. We're going to do everything we can to put North Carolina back on a trajectory where employers will want to come to North Carolina again instead of going to South Carolina or Tennessee. We're going to put our state back on a trajectory where people who make money here in North Carolina will continue to live in North Carolina. They want to establish residences in Wyoming and Florida and Tennessee, like so many of my clients have, so they don't have to pay the North Carolina taxes that we have, which are so much higher than the other states around us. And we're going to see if we can't bring opportunity back to North Carolina. And as soon as these policies start paying off, we're going to start giving raises to teachers and other state employees, because you've been without a raise for a while. Now, those policies have worked. I don't know if you've been keeping up or not, but all the numbers show that North Carolina's economic recovery is in the top 5 or 6 in the country. You know, people don't trust the unemployment rate, and I don't either. So every time the unemployment rate goes down in North Carolina, people poo-poo it. But let me tell you this, there's another rate that's a lot bigger. There's an underemployment rate that the Federal Department of Labor keeps up with that includes all the people who have given up on the job market. It includes people who have gone back to community colleges to gain job skills. It includes even people who are working part-time who want to work full-time. And that number in North Carolina in October of 2012 was 17%. In October of 2013, it was 14.9%. Now that's still way too high, but in 1 year, the year in which we passed drastic tax reform and drastic regulatory reform to help businesses want to come to North Carolina, our rate went down 2.1%, while the rest of the country's rate went down 0.9%. Our rate went down 2.5 times as fast as the country as a whole. Also, the Philly Federal Reserve keeps up with what they call a composite economic index. And that includes a lot of things. It includes non-farm labor, it includes wage increases, it includes unemployment, it includes several other topics. We were 6th in the country during that same period of time. 6th out of 50 states in the increase in our economic composite rate. We're one of the fastest growing economies, believe it or not, in the country. If you think things are recovering slow in North Carolina, you ought to live in the other states. So much so that our president came down about 4 weeks ago to Raleigh and tried to take credit for our recovery here, even though his administration has criticized most of what we've done in order to achieve that recovery. But it's different here in North Carolina than it is in other states. We're recovering fast. Companies are coming to North Carolina. The CEO of Hospira, when they held their board meeting, says that companies around the world know now that North Carolina is open for business. Now, because of that, we're going to have extra tax collections this year, even though we've lowered everybody's taxes. We know that we have enough to cover the raise that we've promised. We know that we have enough to raise our biggest deficiency, starting pay, up to $33,000 this year and $35,000 next year. And by the way, from the numbers I've seen, that affects everybody who's in their first, it affects everybody to some degree, even who's in their first 9 years of teaching. Because according to the chart I have, even a 9th-year teacher right now is only making $34,450. So that's a lot of people. Now, obviously, it will affect those at the very bottom end the most. But the way salaries have been frozen, that's the first 5 years as I look on this chart. So this is going to give a lot of people a raise who need it because they're basically not earning a livable wage at this point in time. Now, what are we going to do beyond that? Well, as the governor said, that's phase one. Phase two is we'd like to raise the salary of the rest of the teachers as well as the bulk of state employees. You know, state employees haven't had but that one small raise in the last 5 years as well. So our intention is to continue to raise state employee pay, including more experienced teachers. But we don't know how much we can do that yet because the numbers haven't come in. We don't get the Department of Revenue's tax collection numbers until late in April. That's why we don't go back into session until May. So our intention is to continue to keep the promises we make. Once we get the state on sound financial footing, we're going to give raises as we're able. We've already announced what we know we're able to do. The rest of it is dependent on what kind of revenues we produce. And as the state continues to improve and as companies continue to come to North Carolina and continue to hire North Carolinians, we should be able to keep those raises on track. But anyway, I just want you to know that we're keeping the promises we make. We've got North Carolina on sound financial footing, and now that we have, the raises are starting to come.
I'd like to add something to that. When the Representative Collins said that we're paying back the federal government for the unemployment insurance, I think we also need to share with you the reason that happened was because, and of course Democrats were in charge at that time, Chamber of Commerce came before the General Assembly year after year after year because we had an economically booming economy. And they asked, could they reduce the amount of money that they paid into the unemployment insurance? And they were given that permission. So year after year, they reduced the amount of money that they put into the unemployment. So when we had the economical boom, there was not enough money there, so we had to borrow money from the federal government. And I think we're getting a little long with our question, and teachers probably need to get out of here. But even at the same time that we were facing all of these budget deficits, we gave a tax break to the wealthiest percent of people in North Carolina. We also pulled out billions of dollars to fund opportunity scholarships. So just as we made those choices, we could have made those choices to put salaries, give salaries to our teachers and our state employees. So it's all dependent on where your priorities are.
The final question is, how have you familiarized yourself with what is happening in Nash-Rocky Mountain Public Schools? What, if anything, are you most proud of? And if you are willing to do so, how will you be an ambassador for our district in the General Assembly? And we'll begin with Representative Richardson.
Over the past year, I have learned more about Nash-Rocky Mountain Schools than I knew before I came to the General Assembly. I've had conversation with your superintendents. I've had conversation with school board members. I have visited a couple of your schools, not as many as I would like to have visited. I was in or at the community college when your superintendent presented his very ambitious strategic plan for Nash-Rocky Mountain School System, and I applaud him for his vision and for his strategicness in thinking about how he sees Nash-Rocky Mountain in the future. And I applaud the partnerships that he has entered into that are supporting the education of students in Nash-Rocky Mountain schools. I have had conversation with students individually. I've had some of your students to be pages, and I have a couple who are applying, even though we have less positions this time. As time goes on, I hope to visit all of your schools. It is very difficult because between the two districts, I think I have over 35 schools. But if you invite me in, I will come. Sometimes I will probably won't make just a special effort, but if you have something that you want me there for, please invite me in, and I will appreciate and I will make every effort to be there. Thank you.
Let me agree with that last statement Representative Richardson just made. So, you've heard the old statement, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that's true a lot of times. We have a lot of demands on our time, so don't think that because we don't show up voluntarily without being asked that we're not interested. I've had an opportunity to be in a couple of classrooms. I remember a couple of years ago I was able to go to Benview Elementary and talk with some very inquisitive kids about how state government works. They were studying state government, and they were very sharp, very perceptive with the questions that they asked. And asked, I thought, a lot of really great questions, like, why are you doing what you're doing? Which is something my wife asks me constantly. I talk with teachers on a regular basis, have several that are friends. I've met with Dr. Jackson on multiple occasions. Try to keep up with kind of what the biggest issues are and the biggest problems are by just talking with people who are there. Obviously, I also read the newspapers and find out some pretty exciting things there. I've already mentioned, it's exciting to me that we have schools here being awarded for statewide awards here in Rocky Mount. I'm also really excited about some of the programs that are going on here because I think they're kind of showing us what the future of education is. A couple that have impressed me are the Young Entrepreneurs Academy that's being kind of done jointly with Chamber of Commerce and a number of schools around here. Those kind of joint efforts are where we've got to go with education. And I really, that particular topic is dear to my heart. I'm on the advisory board for the new School of Entrepreneurism at North Carolina Wesleyan College. If you want to read one book about personal finances, that's the best single book you can read. It's about a couple of, well, I don't want to call them eggheads, but the economy professors, so I don't know what you call them, up north, because their names are Stanley and Danko. They wrote a book called The Millionaire Next Door probably 15 years ago, and it's still the best book on finance I've ever read. And it basically says that the key to wealth in the United States is and always has been entrepreneurism, starting your own business. So to see that opportunity being pushed here among our schools, I think is wonderful. I think it's great. Another thing that I've been impressed with is the college access program that the Communities in Schools is doing as a joint effort with Nash Community College, the way they take middle and high school students over there and kind of show them what's going on and what opportunities are there and that kind of thing. Again, that's the type of joint effort we need. So I think there are a lot of exciting things going on around here. As far as how we'll help, I'm willing to meet with anybody that I can, anytime that I have open. So if you have something you're doing special at your school that you'd like for me to see, please call and invite. The card that I gave you has my cell phone number on it. You can reach me by call or text on that. And I'd love to know more about what's going on. The things I hear about, see, and read about are very exciting. And I'm sure there's a lot of other exciting things that I don't know about.
Good morning. First of all, let's give our representatives a big hand. My son sends me a daily thought every morning. I think he's trying to raise me now. But he texts me. He's growing up. He's 24, and so he's become this man that I'm very proud of. And he sent me a text this morning, and it's so appropriate. And that text says, listening is an act of love. Listening is an act of love and an act of courage. So I want to thank our representatives for taking the time to listen and to share. Although their positions are very different, we expected that. I think it's important for us to have the understanding of how and why decisions are made. And as I came around to each of your schools, and I would share with them, this was an outgrowth of my visiting every single school to discuss the tenure transition process. And we had several of the teachers say, well, we really would like to just have a time to understand and to talk. And to hear how these decisions were made. And so this was how this forum came out. These individuals were selected by their peers to be here this morning. And I applaud you for the thoughtfulness of the questions. And I applaud you for your willingness to be a part of this, because I think in this work right now, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to do what you do every day. It takes a lot of courage to have to hear differing opinions about your work and what you do, but we're a profession. And we are strong, and we do what we do every day, not for any kind of accolades, not for any of that. We do it because we love children. We do it because we are invested in the next generation and the future. We can't do it alone, and so it's important that we engage in the conversation and that we advocate appropriately for our students, for our community, and for our profession. And so I will say both of these individuals, anytime I've picked up the phone to call and have a dialogue, they have been available and willing to discuss their positions. And they've been no different today in terms of being, advocating. But I wanted to share with you that there's a dichotomy in the opinions. And so we have to make sure that everyone understands how the decisions are made that impact our work. And so today was learning. And so I would say that you've listened. And so you now have to be courageous and love your children even more, knowing the conditions and that they're changing, and that we have to be flexible enough to embrace and engage and do those things that are necessary in all of this to move children forward. So I thank you. I'm sure they'll be around, shake hands and that kind of stuff. And we thank you very much for this morning. I think this is an excellent opportunity for you. So thank you. I want to also, before I do that, I want to recognize Mr. Hardy. He's here with us, our other school board member. You guys know I was raised well. I don't stand up and recognize Mr. Hardy. He is here. Stand up, Mr. Hardy, that's something we were taught as children, right? You recognize people and you give them their due. And so I'm going to also recognize Dr. Cindy Bennett, who is our executive director with STEP, and that's our Strategic Twin Counties Partnership. And we are all partners in this work. And so, again, I thank you all for being the professionals you are. I have the best job of all. I get to represent you. But you have the greatest job because you get to touch children every day. Now go touch them.